Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. This is David, and I would like to thank you all for being here. Looking at the past videos that I posted, it seems that there's a tendency to have preference for the videos related to the development of certain skills in education. So, considering that, I propose today a discussion about how to develop thinking skills in our classrooms, being primary or secondary. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at the basic thinking skills. There are many of them. We're going to focus on 2 or 3 of them, and then we're going to give precise examples that could be used both in primary and secondary lessons. I hope these examples will be useful for all of you. The first thing that I would like to discuss is to analyze the different types of thinking skills that we can have. The majority of the research divides the thinking skills in 2 types. Some of them add a 3rd type, which is the lateral thinking skills that we're going to dedicate some time at the end of this presentation. So the first type of skills is the analytical thinking skills. These are the ones that I call the normal ones, the ones that our students develop on a daily basis following typical assessment procedures. Those analytical skills are the ones that we use when we collect, when we analyze information, when we solve problems and make straight decisions. So those are straightforward thinking skills, the one that we're used to develop regularly in lessons when students sit the typical summative assessments, which can be of many types. Those skills are also called convergent thinking skills. And we're going to develop that a little bit further. And the second type of thinking skills is the creative ones, the ones that I like to say artists use, musicians, painters, architects. And these are the ones that bring the ability to look at things differently and find new ways of solving problems, these unexpected ways that some students come up with, and then we define that as creative thinkers. These type of thinking skills are also called divergent. So analytical being convergent things, thinking skills, and creative being divergent. If we want to have a better understanding of the differences between these 2 types, let's have a look at this beautiful mind map. So basically it divides the 2 thinking skill in, again, on the right hand side, the convergent, the logic, the ones that based on multiple facts, students come up with an answer. So facts that can be presented by us, by teachers, being in forms of resources, texts, activities, examples, and then we ask the student to come up with one straight answer. We also call these convergent thinking skills, analytical, linear thinking skills. They're also called vertical. Yeah, and on the other hand, on the left-hand side, we have the divergent thinking, which is much more creative and imagination is being used. And the big difference is that from the question, the students come up with ideas. So looking at the problem through a brainstorming process, they can come up with different ways to solve that question. So I hope that you can see the big difference between both. And then those divergent thinking skills are also called creative and horizontal thinking skills. And the 3rd type also appears in these mind map, and you have at the bottom, those are called lateral thinking skills. The ability to use both in order to solve problems, divergent and convergent. Yeah. So let's have a look at this convergent thinking. And again, is the one that from different facts, students come up with an answer. So basically it's the ability to give the correct answer to standard questions, questions that do not require to be particularly creative, and basically all the standardized benchmark multiple choice tests that we have, the typical tests that we give by the end of every unit or every summative task. The majority of the test and the papers that we give to our students are based on the development of those convergent thinking skills. For example, is when I like this picture when the convergent thinking skills make your brain work as a Tetris with all pieces fit with each other. So types of ways to develop those convergent thinking skills in school, in class: multiple choice tests, true false, fill in blanks. This is very much used in language acquisition tests, Matching, listing, identifying, compare and contrast. This is typical from history, past papers, when what we do is look at two different realities and we ask students to compare and contrast, to look for values and limitations, to make an analysis of both sources. Yeah, and then rank, that's also a possibility. Make a list from more to less important, for example. So basically, those convergent thinking skills, one single and well-established answer is going to be given by the student. So as you can see, it's just one linear thinking process. From the problem, students come up with an answer that must be specific and one only. Okay, and if we look now at the other one, at the divergent thinking skills, is the opposite. So coming from the question itself, the problem, we ask the students to come up with ideas, yeah, through Socratic seminars, for example, brainstorming ideas, collaboration. So this creative or divergent thinking is creative ideas by exploring many possible solutions. Yeah, so at the end, we look for the correct solution, but it's the process that is different. In this way, you try to look for many potential options, and sometimes the solutions are very original, and we're going to see how these can be developed through an activity, yeah, using a paperclip, for example. We're going to see that in a second. So this example of divergent thinking, where you have these pieces who are not fitting together, but they are together in one way or the other, but it's a different way of fitting. So open-ended questions, brainstorming ideas that develop collaboration skills, creating new endings or new dialogues, or the what-if questions when we request students to imagine what would have happened if. Yeah, or free writing activities, creating writing. This is how they call it in Lang and Lit or language acquisition subjects. Mind mapping that helps developing organizational skills. That's very, very important also to put your ideas together, because through a mind map, what we can put in place is different learning styles, visual, kinesthetic, and different ones. So through an image, we can have a better understanding of the problem. So let's see, let's propose a list of divergent activities, and I will also put the links to the different places where I found those activities. This one is very interesting. I did it with my students, and I gave them, each one of them, a paperclip. Why a paperclip? Because it's a little object that is easy to transport. So I was able to have them in my pocket and just give them away. So you leave a paperclip on top of each table, and then you ask the students to come up with as many ideas as possible on how to use a paperclip. So not only for the typical and normal use that we have, be creative, be original, try to think, what can we do with a paperclip? And believe me, they will come up with lots of ideas. I'm not giving you any of the answers of my students because I would like you to try that, and you tell me in the chat of this presentation what the answers were. But just to let you know, one of the students thought, what about having a giant paperclip and use it for something different? So that's a creative divergent thinking. Paperclips are not always the same size. We can change the size, the color, we can change the material, and so many things. So a very interesting activity that you can do with any object, but paperclips are very easy to transport and bring from one classroom to another. Another activity, very interesting, in particular for primary students, we talk about grade 4, grade 5 students. You can project this bus on the board and just ask the students, what direction is the bus going? Right? Left? And then try to tell them to explain why. Why is it going this way? Why is it going the other way? Yeah, and then I don't know if you really want me to give you the answer. I should now give you a couple of minutes to think about it, and then you take a decision. But the answer, so you know, is look, where's the door? There's no door. So probably the door is on the other side of the bus. So the bus might be going to the left or to the right, depending if it's in the UK or is another country. Okay, but look for the door and it will tell you what direction the bus is going. So this is creative thinking, looking for solutions that are not obvious in the picture. And that activity, believe me, is going to be great fun with your primary students or even with the secondary. They will find this amazing. Another activity, and there's a video on YouTube that you can put that title on it, Walk Through Paper Trick. So what you do is you put on top of the table one piece of paper, a normal single piece of paper, not complicated, and you ask them to cut it in a way that there's a hole in the middle that you can walk through the hole. So you will see how they will start thinking, how can I make a hole in the middle of the paper so somebody can go through the paper? It's very complicated, but there's a way. So you can fold the paper following the lines, as you can see here, and then cut it through. And you will, again, I invite you to put the video on YouTube. It's amazing. It's amazing because it allows students to think, again, creatively, not simplistic process where the paper is in front of you, you can just cut a hole in the middle and it will never work. But just have a look, type that on, or Google it on YouTube, Walk Through Paper Trick, and you will see. Just amazing. Yeah. And another activity that comes from that source that you have at the bottom, which I found very interesting, is that random shapes drawing. So you can give a piece of paper to your students and ask them to draw random shapes in their piece of paper, give them a couple of minutes. And then after that, once the shapes are on the paper, tell them, can you now use the shapes to give sense, to give coherence to your shapes and see how do they look like. And then the activity that is in the YouTube video, those are screenshots, you will see that all of a sudden the shapes can become animals or, I don't know, forms by putting eyes and mouth and so on. And then the third step is going to ask the students, now that you have given some sense to your shapes, can you give a sense to the whole picture? Can you imagine a way where all these shapes will be together in the same story? And then that's the image, isn't it? The dog dreaming on different shapes of dogs. So it gives that creativity in the process of the students. It takes time, is great fun, and students like to develop this divergent thinking by practicing these activities. Yeah, and on the third type, it's what we call the lateral thinking skills, which is for some people a style of divergent thinking because it's very creative. For some others, it's the capacity, and I think that's the definition, the capacity to bring both types of thinking at the same time. And I love this sentence. It's not thinking outside of the box. Is thinking like there is no box, so no barriers, no borders, and that our creativity can fly without any limit to it. And this can be mind maps or activities called using your sentence or reverse thinking, which is thinking backwards. So I invite you to look at those definitions and some activities on the internet, because if not, this session would have been too long. But if you have any interest, any particular interest on any of these activities, please write on the chat and I'll be very happy to upload a session about lateral thinking. But if it helps, there is a brilliant website, which is the one that you have there at the bottom, with lots of little problems like the 3 that I propose here in this example. But there are hundreds of them, of stories that allow students to think, to reflect, and that can be converted into a Socratic seminar style. For example, you can just imagine, read the first question or the first problem. A man and his son are in a car accident. The father dies on the scene, but the child is rushed to the hospital. When he arrives, the surgeon says, I can't operate on this boy. He's my son. How can this be? So what you can do is just propose that question and then allow the students to ask as many questions as you want, but you can only answer by yes or no. Only by yes or no. And then you will see how this brainstorm starts to happen in the classroom, where students talk to each other and they are feeling more and more engaged by asking questions, but make sure that you can only answer by yes or no. Yeah, and now this is the problem that I propose to you to see how can you develop your creative thinking. And I'm going to ask you pose a problem, and I would love you to try to answer, give your answer on the chat. Again, divergent thinking. That's the problem that I'm proposing. There is a man building a house, and the 4 walls of the house are oriented south. One of the walls has a window. The man looks through the window, and a bear crosses in front of the window. The question is, what is the color of the bear? So think about it. And please write on the chat, what's the bear's color, and give me the reason why. Yeah, so listen as many times as you want at my problem. I'm inviting you to develop your creative thinking, and I'm inviting you to share your experience with the thinking strategies, developing thinking skills, and how do you do that in your classrooms. There are many, many ways to do it, many fun activities, many things that can be done to engage your students and invite them to develop their thinking skills, which are crucial for students that we are training for professions that don't exist yet. So the best thing we can do is inviting them to think and develop the capacity to find solutions for problems that will be presented to them later on in life. So I hope you found this presentation interesting. I invite you to develop those thinking skills with your students, and please write your feedback on the chat so we can all share best practice and enjoy the experiences from each other. Thank you very much. See you in the next session.